is Courtney, and I want to talk about my testimony, how I came back to God. Okay, so if you know me, then you know how I was when I was younger, and I'm gonna get into all of that. And if you don't, you're gonna get to know me. So I am Courtney, and I'm about to be 19. I am 18 years old. I recently dedicated my life back to Christ, January 5th, 2020. And yeah, so let's talk from the beginning. So the beginning, when I was in elementary school, middle school, and my first 2 years of high school, I was very aggressive, a very mean person. I wanted people to be afraid of me. I just wanted to be the big bad wolf all the time. Like, I felt like I just needed to be the big bad wolf. Like, I felt like I just needed to be that type of person. I would always start fights with people. I would try to get people to fight me. I got into some fights, not in school, but outside of school I got into some fights or whatever, but them fights wasn't even like, them fights was even fights for real. Like, it wasn't no real beef how I would try to make things seem, or how I would try to make things, I would try to make things seem like I was like with all the big boy, with all of that stuff, and that's not me. So fast forward into the story. Yeah, so fast forward. So yeah, I would start fights, blah blah blah. I would get on the bus and try to fight this one girl. A lot of other things would happen, and all of that like really streamed from me being insecure, me not liking the way I looked, just feeling like I had something to prove when I didn't have anything to prove at all, and things like that. So then fast forward into the story, my middle school years came, same thing happening, same all like with the drama, things like that, just trying to fight people, always trying to be the big bad wolf. High school came, the first years of high school, the first 2 years of high school, really 3 years, I was in drama. I would always try to fight people still. I would be twerking on Instagram, cursing a lot. Like, it was a lot of, I would be cursing a lot. And when growing up, like, I felt like my dad's a preacher, my mom's a minister, and I felt like but everybody else is not like me, so I felt like I had to fit in with the crowd instead of just being my own person and being a preacher's kid, a PK kid. But I felt like, no, I had to fit in. I had to like prove something. Like, I felt like I had to be like the big bad wolf. So yeah, so high school came, I was in drama, things like that. I was on Instagram asking people if they want to pull up. Like, I'm doing videos, I'm with all the drama. I'm posting like 10 million stuff on my spam, I'm posting stuff on my regular page, I'm in your comments. Like, I'm doing all of that, like all of the wild stuff that I should not be doing. But of course, here I am trying to be big bad wolf, trying to fit in with the crowd. So and always trying to fight people and things like that. So fast forward, I started maturing more, and I was losing a lot of friends and things like that, and I was becoming like a little bit isolated. I had a couple friends, but not as many as I used to. So yeah, so I started to become a little bit more isolated and things like that. And that's when I got in a relationship, and no disrespect to the person I was in a relationship with, is 100% positive stuff over this way, but this person introduced me to weed. And before, and even like a little in between, like I was hanging out with other people who introduced me to weed too, but this person really had me into smoking and things like that. And then it came into us doing other sinful things like fornicating and things like that. So we was always smoking weed and fornicating. Like, that was the main thing that we was doing. And I was so deep into sin, so spiritually blind, that I did not realize how far I was getting myself into, what I was creating, the fact that I was breaking the covenant, the fact that I was not doing things the way that God wanted me to do things. So yeah, so whatever, I'm still in like deep in the sand, and I'm slowly losing friends and things like that. The end of my junior year, I started to realize that I was like, I would always be anxious, I would always be like freaking out and worried and things like that. And all of my life I've always been worried how people saw me, how people viewed me, which also led to the reason why I was always a big bad wolf, because I didn't want to be known as like the preacher's kid, because then I'll be treated different, then I'll be made fun of, I thought, and things like that. So So I'm just like completely discarding the fact that I go to church every Sunday, completely discarding the fact that my parents don't play that. Like I'm literally living a double life, like I'm just living a double life. I'm being two-faced. And so yeah, so then I started to realize like how anxious I would get and how worried I would get and things like that. I was slipping into depression. I would always cry out of nowhere. The relationship and people at school, because then I started to pull away from that slowly, from the drama part, but I was still like living in sin. Like I was still doing like the sinful things, smoking, fornicating, cursing, twerking, all of that stuff. But I was getting far away from doing like things like that. I was getting far away from being in drama and things like that. And so that's when my friendships were splitting. And so yeah, so then more into the story, I realized how anxious I was getting. I would have anxiety attacks a lot. The relationship took a toll on me because I wasn't really I wasn't really treated good. I was being cheated on. And I felt like not pretty, and that was my whole life. I didn't feel pretty. Like I now I feel wonderful for myself, but before I did not feel pretty at all. So not even from that person, but from like my whole life, I just didn't feel beautiful. And so I was in a lot of drama with that, with like, keeping my mans. Like I felt like I had something to prove. Like that's my man's. Like I gotta fight over him. Like period. All of that. Like, and before this, I would date a lot of other people. Like it was a time that I thought I was lesbian. I dated a female. We didn't do anything though. I just thought like, I was my sophomore year. I'm thinking I had to fight people over her too. Like I'm being like just a lot. I dated a guy my freshman year. I used to go to these parties. These parties was like jumping. Like I used to go to these parties or whatever like that. There was like Jaja. There was some parties hosted by this girl named Jaja, and I'll go to those parties. And I met this other guy, and he was like, yeah, he was just somebody I thought I was gonna be with too. And I used to argue with some girl on Instagram about him too and stuff like that. So yeah, back to the relationship I'm talking about, my junior year. So yeah, that happened. I was really realizing how anxious I was, blah blah blah. I was into smoking. I was into doing all this other crazy stuff, things like that. Fast forward, senior year came. Still in this relationship. More and more I was getting more anxious, having a lot of anxiety attacks. I was not in drama anymore at this point, but I wasn't changed. I was still living a sinful life. After that happened, that was the relationship ended. And then that's when I went into depression. And I went into like deep depression and things like that. Like I was really, really depressed, really sad. Can I not? I was in deep depression, really sad, and things like that. And yeah, so I was really and then I didn't have any friends, so I'm like really like freaking out at the fact that OMG, like I'm finna go to college, I don't got no friends, like things like that. And yeah, I just had like two friends, probably. I had like two friends. And so yeah, after that, after that happened, y'all, I'm sorry, like that beeping really got me like tight. So after that happened, I was really depressed, really sad, felt alone all the time, felt like killing myself. It was many times throughout, especially in middle school, that I wanted to like kill myself. But yeah, so then I went to school in August of 2019. And so I went to school in August. Things was looking up, but right before I moved in, I was having an anxiety attack. Like right before the day I moved in, the day before I went down to Albany, I was freaking out. Like I was crying. I was really sad from being broken up from this person. I was really sad just from like a lot. I was just like freaking out. I felt like I had nobody. I felt alone, so I felt like I don't know if I should go, like freaking out. So fast forward, I went to school in Albany. School was great. I would go to parties still, was twerking, was cursing, but something in me was shifting. And when I went to college is when I was like, well, like, Courtney, like, you're out here by yourself. What else do you know? And I knew church. That's all I knew was church. Oh, actually a little bit. Before school, even before I went to Albany, I sung at my high school, and that video went viral or whatever, and I shouted on stage, and that really is when I was like, I really took heart and took into what that song meant and how amazing God was. If you know what I'm talking about, do you know what video I'm talking about? If you know, I sung a song called Amazing by Hezekiah Walker, and that made me realize, like, I really realized that it was more in me. I just never knew. That was my first time ever shouting on stage in front of anybody. That was my first time even really shouting. I never shouted before, for real. So yeah, so I went to Albany State, blah blah blah. I was by myself, and it was a change. A change was happening inside of me that I wanted. All I knew was church. So, Courtney, you gotta go to church out here, like blah blah. Like I found this mentorship group I was in, and I went to church with them, and yeah, so things was looking up. I joined the gospel choir, things was looking up and things like that. I met a couple of people. Then, and they were but I was still partying. I was still going to the fraternity houses. I was still going to all the little parties up the road. I was going to like all the parties. I was turned. I was lit. I was drinking, smoking, twerking, doing all that, and fornicating still and all that. So I met these group of friends, and we was partying. We would party, drink, and smoke and things like that. And then once I started going to church more, well, I was just going to church that night and I was by myself, something in me kept telling me that I am set apart from these girls. Something in me was like, I don't want to do this no more. And slowly I stopped going to parties with them. Really I made this, and once I was getting more rooted in God and more into the mentorship program, and I started praying more and realizing who God was more and more. Like I prayed and I prayed and I prayed on many things that was coming to pass, that was manifesting into my life. I realized that God is calling me to greater, and I have to give up some things. And excuse me, I was like, I have to give up some things. I didn't want to give it up. I did not want to give it up at all. It was hard, but God was calling me and I had to go. I had to be obedient. And so slowly but surely I stopped going to parties with them. Homecoming week is when I announced to everybody the day before homecoming week started. I was talking to gospel choir and I was like, y'all pray for me as I go back on my spiritual journey, because I told myself I was going on one when I was in my senior year, but I didn't take it serious. Like, I always knew who God was, but I didn't take it serious until I was isolated. And I realized that God will isolate you to get you to realize that only person you are dependent on, only person you need to depend on is Him. And that's exactly what He did. And so while I'm going more and more, after homecoming, I went to like 3 parties on homecoming. After that, I said I was done partying. I was done partying. Smoking really wasn't my thing anyway, so it wasn't hard to give up smoking. Drinking wasn't my thing. I just did it to fit in. And then I realized how my friends wasn't really my friends. I realized how we I love them, but we wasn't on the same path. And it's okay to leave people that is not on the same path as you. And I was independent before. I was isolated with just God before. I can go back into that, and I was perfectly fine with that. Anyway, fast forward, I met an amazing friend of mine. Her name is Shakia. We became really cool. We went to church together and things like that. We was in gospel choir together. I knew her a little bit before. The enemy tried to get us to beef, but yeah, God had other plans, period. So yeah, so after that happened, yeah. So I went to church more and more. I was realizing who God was for myself. I finally cut out fornication. I remember I wrote it in my journal that this day I am done with this. That also led to me cutting out pornography and masturbation, which I also was in that, and I was also introduced to that at a very young age by a group of people I used to hang out with. And yeah, so let's get into when the change completely happened. So in November 16th, the gospel choir went to go sing at a church, and Tiffany Andrews was there, and she spoke a prophetic word into me that day so many things I was praying for manifested. Everything that I was asking God about, she literally answered it. And I remember I was praying on being able to have the gift of speaking in tongues. I remember I was praying on something for God to speak to me. I remember I was asking God, why is all these people leaving my life? Because I mourned the friends that I was friends with, those girls that I was telling you about. I mourned that friendship because I was like, I'm so alone and I feel like I need to be their friend. And I really mourned that friendship. But I realized that God had me to realize that He was moving all the people out of my life that did not need to be with me. And that's exactly what Tiffany poured into me. She poured so many words, so many more words into me. And yeah, so from there I remember I shouted all over that church. I shouted all over that church. I remember I asked for the gift of speaking in tongues. I spoke in tongues that night. I just fully that day was in awe of God, and I realized I fully came in content and intimacy with Him after that day. Then after that happened, I came home for winter break. Came home for winter break in December, and I was like, I said I gotta get rebaptized. I gotta rededicate my life. I got to. And some people believe one faith, one baptism, but I got baptized when I got baptized when I was like 9. I don't think that really counts because I didn't realize the significance of it. Many people have gotten baptized when you were younger, and you think like, oh, I can't get baptized again because it says one faith, one baptism. But if you didn't understand the significance of it, I believe if you didn't understand the significance of it, then you can get baptized again. Like, I didn't understand the significance of it. I just knew I was going to water. Yay, woo, fun. Like, my cousin doing it too. Like, all these people at the church are doing it, so I'm just gonna do it too. And I got into the water. But now I understand the significance of it. And so when I got rebaptized again, it was, many of you seen the pictures. And after that, my life has been turbo with God. I have been on fire for Him. So many things has happened, and I realized that God is sovereign. He reigns forever and ever. I remember that I just always am focused on the fact that He still sits on the throne. No matter what goes on, that He still sits on the throne. And I want this testimony to be encouragement for someone else, to let them know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I really didn't go into depth about my testimony, but that's the surface level. But many people who's been a part of my journey, my mother, many other people has been a part, my best friend, Jalen, Raven, they have been a part of my journey. They have seen me be this mean, horrible person to being a light, to being literally a reflection of God's heart, to literally being a girl after God's own heart. I have been literally just in awe. I have been just in awe, I have been, it's just something in me has a hunger for Him. And once you get hungry for something, that feeling don't go away. You want to eat it more and more. Like when y'all introduced to Chick-fil-A, and then now you want Chick-fil-A more and more. You introduced to Popeye's chicken sandwich, now you want Popeye's chicken sandwich more and more. Like, that's how it was for me. Like, it was just turbo. And after that, God has called me to higher places. He has revealed a calling in my life. He has revealed so much to me that I am just so ready for it to completely manifest. I'm truly in happiness. I'm truly just in awe. Like, I'm truly content with my life, and I'm really happy. I'm genuinely happy. And I thought I would never just if I just never had those people praying for me, if I never had a praying mother, a praying father, I don't know where I would be. And the prayers of the righteous avail it not. That is true. The prayers of the righteous truly come forth. Like, when you have people praying for you, they truly, like, it might not happen now, it might not happen in 2 days, but truly those prayers come to pass. Truly those prayers really build you up and really allow something to be birthed into you. And literally, that's what it was. It was just like, it was like a baby just formed, like something new. And so guys, I just thank you for listening to my testimony. I hope this encouraged somebody. If you need anything, prayer, anything, I'm always here. My Instagram is Courtney.Jael, Jael, that's how you spell it. I might do a testimony. I might do a video on what my name means. But yes, so I will see you guys in another video. I thank you for listening to my testimony again. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. That's Corinthians 2:17. So God bless and bye.